प्रत्यावहै। ओम शांति।
Chapter 2, verses 16 to 25. नासतो विद्यते भावः नाभावो विद्यते सतः उभयोरपि दृष्टोऽन्तः त्वनयोस्तत्त्वदर्शिभिः अविनाशि तु तद्विद्धि येन सर्वमिदं ततं विनाशमव्ययस्यास्य न कश्चित् कर्तुमर्हति। अन्तवन्त इमे देहाः नित्यस्योक्ता शरीरिणः अनाशिनो प्रमेयस्य तस्माद्युध्यस्व भारत। ययेनं वेति हन्तारम् यश्चैनं मन्यते हतम् उभौ तौ न विजानीतः नायं हन्ति न हन्यते न जायते म्रियते वा कदाचित् नायं भूत्वा भविता वा न भूयः अजो नित्यः शाश्वतोऽयं पुराणः न हन्यते हन्यमाने शरीरे वेदाविनाशिनं नित्यं यथेनमजमव्ययम् कथं स पुरुषः पार्थ कं पार्थयति हन्तिकम् पार्थांसि जीर्णानि यथा विहाय नवानि गृह्णाति नरोपराणि तथा शरीराणि विहाय जीर्णानि अन्यानि संयाति नवानि वेहि नैनं छिन्दन्ति शस्त्राणि नैनं दहति पावकः न चैनं क्लेदयन्त्यापः न शोषयति मारुतः अच्छेद्योऽयमदाप्योऽयम् अक्लेद्यो शोष्य एव च नित्यः सर्वगतस्ताणुः अचलोऽयं सनातनः अव्यक्तोऽयमचिन्त्योऽयम् अधिकार्योऽयमुच्यते तस्मादेवं विदित्वैनं नानुशोचितुमर्हसि।
He quotes another verse from Kathopanishad, verse number 20. The description of Atman, the description of Brahman, he continues. This is not born, nor does it die, nor having been, will ever again cease to be. This is unborn, eternal, changeless, ancient. It is not killed when the body is killed. He quotes from Kathopanishad because Kathopanishad is the dialogue about death. Nachiketas goes to Yama and asks, what happens? Is there life after death? Some say there is life after death. Some say there is no life after death. You being the god of death should be knowing whether there is life or not. So tell me, is there life after? What happens after death? Yama said, don't ask. Don't ask such questions. Ask questions that you can understand. Don't ask questions that which you cannot understand, Nachiketas. Because even Devas can't understand this. Even wise men are not able to understand this. Therefore, why are you asking? And Nachiketas prove to Yama that he is determined to know the answer. He is determined to know the answer when he is ready to risk everything for the answer. When he is not ready to risk anything for the answer, it's a Mari biscuit discussion. You don't have anything else to discuss, you sit and talk some philosophy, talk something. So that's the general discussion about what is God, what is life, is there anything after life. Actually, no one is bothered about it when there is nothing else to discuss, and Yama is not interested in that discussion. So he says, I will not answer you. And Nachiketas proved his intent. What is the intent? The ready to leave the comforts of the known to plunge into the unknown. That's the seeker. Ready to leave the comforts of the known and plunge into the unknown. In the comforts of the known, growth cannot happen. Carefully follow. In the comforts, growth can never happen. That's why more and more and more comforts are given. You see the child deteriorating. More comforts doesn't make the child more responsible. More comforts doesn't make the child more alert. In fact, it brings the opposite effect. So, growth, the principle of growth is the comforts of the known has to be left and plunge into the unknown. What is the unknown? Life is known, living is known, death is not known. And the only reality seems to be death. It doesn't matter the number of years a human being lives or anything lives. One thing that seems to be certain is death. So the seeker, so the wise student, what he does is leaves the comfort of the known. What is known? The world is known, life is known, living is known. All that doesn't seems to be permanent. All that doesn't seems to be staying with him. Therefore, what he does, by the process of inquiry, he transcends by the process of knowledge and inquiry, he transcends the known. That is the world. But the unknown is still there. What is unknown? What is beyond life? That he cannot logically, for which he cannot proceed logically. Therefore, what he does, he risks everything, go to the master, sits at his feet and say, answer. To such a seeker, Kathopanishad, he talks about the process of death. Now what Krishna does in Gita, he quotes the verses from Kathopanishad. In fact, in the entire Gita, you find about 7-8 verses from Kathopanishad directly referred to. Why the Kathopanishad? Because it fits into the context. What is the context here? Arjuna is concerned about death, killing. What happens after killing? So he continues the discussion. This is not born, nor does it die. This and it refers to Brahman. The typical language of the Upanishads is, they don't say anything, straightforward. So easy if it is said, Atman is not born, Atman doesn't die. They don't use that word. They use the word this, it, that, this. What is the reason? There is only one reason. Anything that is said directly, there is an instant understanding. Anything, if it is said directly, there is an instant understanding, but that understanding disappears also very fast. Anything that is probed, inquired, and then digested stays with you. So to keep the process of inquiry alive, they have to use this, it, Atman, or they have to use these kind of words. We say, why can't they say? Straightforward or it becomes so easy. No, that's not the language of the Upanishads. That's not the language of the Shastras, the enlightened masters. Because some gap is always left for you to reflect, for you to introspect. This is not born, nor does it die, nor having been will ever again cease to be. This is unborn, eternal, changeless, ancient. It is not killed when the body is killed. Now, unborn, eternal, changeless, ancient, all belongs to the category of time. All belongs to the category of time. In the world, the way that we understand time, our time is linear. Again I repeat, the way that we understand time, our time is linear. Linear means there has to be something before, there has to be something after. Our understanding of time, our concept of time is linear. Linear means there has to be something before, there has to be something after. Second, minute, hour, day, week, month, year. You can go. All the unit of time has a beginning and an, when I say beginning and an end, there is something before that, there is something that is going to be after that. Anything that has something before, anything that has something after alone can be conceived by the intellect. By the human being can conceive only anything in linear time frame. That's why we keep asking the question, what time did time begin? What time? How did the whole thing started? How can you say that? Because it's linear. You follow what I am saying? Now when it comes to the Supreme Self, God, it is beyond time. Now, eternal when he talks about, or ancient when he talks about, don't understand it as another facet of time. Just as second, minute, hour, day, logically it doesn't conclude in eternal. That's what you need to understand. There it transcends the time. Are you able to follow what I am saying? 1 plus 2 plus 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 doesn't end in infinity. That's where in mathematics they say tending towards the calculus, the highest form of mathematics, all limits are drawn tending to infinity. Over a period of time you say it 10 times, you believe that infinity is also another kind of number. Just as God cannot be defined, 10 times you repeat, becomes another definition of God. How many ever times you say God cannot be defined, it doesn't evoke any enquiry. It satisfies. It satisfies because this becomes another kind of definition. If the probing is there, how many ever times you say God cannot be defined, the intensity of probe remains the same. To keep the intensity of probing alive, various indicative definitions are given. The indicative definitions in this verse and few more verses will continue. The same thing. Now he is saying it is unborn. That which has birth and death can be conceived of. That which has no birth cannot be conceived of. Eternal. Eternal means timeless. Eternal is not part of time. Eternal is when time is transcended. Changeless. Changeless means beyond. It's not that it is modified changes. It's not that it is constantly changing. Changeless means it is beyond changes. Ancient. Ancient means the oldest, the first. Ancient means the oldest, the first. All indicates the human intellect cannot understand it. Carefully follow the difference. The human intellect cannot understand this, but can get into that state of wonderment. These indicative definitions of Brahman or God is not meant to create an understanding, but to cause an wonderment. That wonderment creates a different kind of probe. That wonderment creates a different kind of See, the fundamental difference is, if it is very technical, understand it like this. It becomes easy. A person can have a PhD in science. He can win a Nobel Prize in science and can still be as superstitious as anyone. Is it not possible? He can win a Nobel Prize in science and be as superstitious as anyone. He can also go and buy a string and tie. He can also say maybe good luck, bad luck. He can also say all that. It means what? In the world, understanding and personality are always too different. A person who has a PhD in mathematics need not be a mathematician by nature. He can be as illogical, as unreasonable as anyone can be. Are you able to follow? The understanding is different, the personality is different. That's where he uses the word intelligence and intellect. Are you able to follow? Here, the wonderment is an inspiration, a thirst, a search, where wanting to experience is creative. The difference is, you can be a superstitious person and you can call yourself a scientist. In spirituality, what is the difference? Knowing God is experiencing God. If you say you know God, you have experienced God. If you have not experienced God, you have to only say, I do not know. I do not know. If it is so inspiring, risk your life to know it. If it is so inspiring, risk your life to know it. Our inspiration later we will see, sir. We have so much of immediate problems to attend to. Why are we worried about Atman Brahman la? Let us worry about our immediate. Let us worry about our immediate problems now. That's where the two types of intellect, the gross intellect and the subtle intellect. The gross intellect that functions in the world is completely different. The way in which it functions is completely different from the way in which the subtle intellect functions. The subtle intellect is, the starting point of subtle intellect is Ascharya, wonderment. As you probe that, as the intensity of search is more, as the intensity of thirst is more, it becomes deeper and deeper. It becomes greater and greater. The intensity goes on increasing. But the starting point of it is wonderment. Starting point of it is always wonderment. That's why connect this to the example. We have heard this any number of times. A person who's least evolved spiritually, what will evoke inspiration in him? Niagara Falls or Mount Everest. Remember that example? I am sure everyone knows this. We have heard it any number of times. As you evolve, sunset, sunrise. As you evolve further, peeling a banana. As you still reach the height, daffodils is enough. When you are not at all developed, Shankar, not at all developed, when you are not at all developed, miracles. God comes in straight and sit in front of you also, you will not know. That's where I give this. If there is a Gautam Buddha walking on the roadside and there is a street magician walking along with him, the street magician will be more appealing than a Buddha. Yeah. The magician will be more inspiring than Buddha. Why? Why? Physical appearance, attire. Buddha's attire is more attractive than magicians. Magician looks actually very scary. The magician gives you a hope of solving your problem. Carefully follow. That's what I am trying to arrive at. The magician gives you a hope that your problem can be solved. Krishna says, the enlightened master says, transcend the problem. There is no solving the problem. Subtle intellect says how to transcend. In the world, the search is to solve a problem. When the shift happens is when you have done enough inquiry. When you have done enough inquiry. What is the inquiry? How much ever you solve a problem in the world, whatever you bring in as a solution turns into another problem. You have a problem, you bring a solution to the problem. In a question of time, over a period of time, what you brought as a solution itself turns into another problem. So, in effect, in the world, there is no such thing as solution. Because problem keeps reappearing in different. The only entertainment is new appearances. But the problem remains the same. A person, a seeker having understood this, he starts a different inquiry. What is the inquiry? The inquiry of, instead of solving, how to transcend. Don't try to solve the problem, transcend. What is solving the problem? I have said this many times before, I am saying this again. Same example. Mullah Nasruddin woke up in the middle of the night, saw wife and children sleeping, suddenly he became enlightened. Looking at them, he became enlightened. Only man looking at his wife and children got enlightened is him, I think. Others only run away. He got enlightened looking at them. Having got enlightened, he woke them up. Because when you are enlightened, you want to. When you want to sleep, when the mother starts singing lullaby to the child, when she wants to sleep, make the child sleep so that you sleep. Now, enlightened man will not sing a lullaby to make you to sleep. He will be interested in waking you up. So, Mullah Nasruddin woke them up. You know how you are all here? You know what brought you here? I said, don't irritate us with all this thing. At 2 o'clock in the morning, don't bore us with all this. Fall off to sleep. The little girl, the youngest one, asked him, what are you saying? Do you realize how you all came here? What brought you here? He said, I don't know what you are saying. What brought us here? A rat brought you all here, he said. Rat. You are all here because of a single rat. He is more confused. What has rat got to do with we being here? Then he started. How he started? Solving the problems of life. He had a problem with a rat. In your house, if you have a problem with a rat, solution is, some wise man he went to asking for a solution. The wise man said, bring in a cat. The problem of rat got solved, but what is the problem now? To maintain the cat is the problem now. Because you have to feed the cat, the milk. So in order to get milk, to feed the cat, so that the problem of rat is solved, he brought in a cow. So that the cow will yield milk, and that milk will feed the cat, and the cat will take care of the rat. Logic is perfect. Now the cow has become a problem, because the cow needs fodder, grass. To get grass, he bought a piece of plot so that he can grow grass, and that grass will feed the. I am not saying the whole thing. You please say it by yourself mentally. I am so bored saying. So that the cow will yield milk, and that milk will feed the cat, and the cat will take care of the rat. Now, suddenly he realized that he has so many things to take care of, which he can't do by himself. So, he brought in a lady to take care. Eventually fell in love with that lady, produced 5 children. Now he is saying, now you all understand. You are all here because of a single rat. If only I had stayed with the rat, none of you would have been. All the problems that we try to solve within the framework of the world, within the periphery of the world, is nothing but another problem. It's not a pessimistic way of looking at it. It is the reality. That's all. Whatever you bring as a solution turns into another problem. You can't do the work, you bring in the maid, after a period of time, the maid becomes the problem. Because you need to handle her also. Then you, to conquer that, you do something else. That's why human beings are all not needed, sir. Machines are comfortable. That's why we brought in. Why we brought in so much of machines? We thought less problem with the machines. Now machines have become more problematic. Now we will do something else to solve this. Eternally, if you stand apart and look at it, this is the philosophy. This is where Vedanta starts, religion starts. If you look at it objectively, if you stand apart and see it clearly, what do you understand? Just replacing problem with another problem. Carefully follow now. This is the whole crux. If there is no problem, you will not say I am happy, I am blissful. You will say I am bored. If anyone comes and tells you bored, at least I have done it within myself many a times. If anyone says I am bored, immediately look into their life. Everything will be more or less alright at that point of time. When things are more or less alright at that point of time, instead of getting more inspired, instead of becoming more enthusiastic, instead of becoming more energetic, the person says bored. Simply give one problem. The person gets very busy. Do you understand that? This is the way in which ignorance functions. Superficially it looks very, on the surface, ignorance looks very clear, very logical. In effect, what do we end up doing? Replacing one with the other. The seeker, having fed up of having done this any number of times, starts seeking. Is there a way to transcend? Is there a way to transcend? Ignorance has its own function. Is it okay till now? It is dissolving the problem. From the root, you go to the root and make sure that the root of the problem is not there. The root of the problem, the mother of all problems, the mother of all problems, the mother of all evil, the root of all problems is only one thing: ignorance. The mother of all problems, he says, is ignorance. When ignorance is tackled at the root, the potential in you to create problems is the potential to create new problems is taken away, eliminated. Not only that, existing problems also vanishes. Existing problems also vanishes because the root of the problem is attended to. That's where he says, in the world there is no solution. No one attends to the problem. No one knows how to solve any problem because the ignorance is kept alive, but replaced with. Therefore, the way in which Vedanta solves, the way in which Vedanta helps is in going to the root. What is the root? The mother of all evil, the mother of all problems is ignorance. In the 15th chapter, what he calls as the primary root and secondary root. The primary root is ignorance, the secondary roots are any number of problems. How much ever you try and cut, in that place a new problem keeps surfacing. Maybe for that generation or maybe for the next generation. But nevertheless, what happens? Ignorance remains. Therefore, wherever that person goes, wherever the human being goes, he carries the seed of problems in him. That's why wherever he goes, either he sees a problem or he creates a problem. Because in him, the seed of problem is there. What is the seed of problem? Ignorance. Is it okay till now? Is it okay? Become wise. At least கேட்கறதுக்காக நல்லா இருக்கு இல்லையா? Okay, there is a hope at least. Somewhere it can be rid of. Ignorance is not knowing the reality. Ignorance is having taken the unreal to be real, real to be unreal. Ignorance is asking question, is there God? The seeker asks, is there a world? Because ignorance is to ask, is there God? Seeker is to ask, is there a world? Now when you ask, is there a God, what is the reality? You are asking about God in taking the stance of world as real. As long as you believe world is real, that is ignorance. So the question is not about the reality of God, it's about the reality of, that's where the seeker is not bothered about the reality of God. There is no question about God. All the analysis is done only in relation to the world. That's where you find the philosophy is very uninteresting at some point of time, because whatsoever you ask about God, the analysis will be done about the world. Whatsoever is discussed about God, the analysis is done about the world, because you ask questions about God based on the world as real. So whatsoever is said about God will be seen only within the framework of the world, within the domain, within the periphery of the world only. You follow? That is ignorance. The real is so convincing that it is not existing. The unreal is so convincing that it appears real. That is ignorance. There is a very unique way of Vedanta, of religion, of enlightened master. The fundamental difference. 2 plus 2 equals 2 plus 2 equals 4. It doesn't matter who asked this question. Correct? Whosoever asks this question, 2 plus 2 equals 4. Because here, what is important here? The answer. The answer is important. Same question asked by 10 different people, the answers will be same in the world. That is the way of ignorance. That's the way in which ignorance functions. A person went to Buddha and said, is there God? He said, no, there is no God. Another person went to him and asked, is there God? He said, what doubt? There is God. The third person came and asked, is there God? He said, maybe. If you are keen, we can explore together. Ananda, the chief disciple, saw all the 3 answers. After all 3 left, looked at Buddha and said, why are you contradicting yourself so much? Why can't you give the same answer? Buddha turned around and said, what is your question? Don't ask their questions. What is your question? Now, whosoever asks, what is God? Answer will be the same. But then, here you see, question is the same, answers are different. That's where you get confused beyond a point. Same question, why? Different answers. Because here the questioner is answered, not the question. That's where Vedanta addresses the you, he says. Vedanta addresses the subject. Vedanta addresses the questioner, not the question. Means anyone asks, answer is the same. You follow what I am saying? Now, the different answers is dependent upon the different levels of questioner. By answering the questioner is dissolved. When the questioner is dissolved, when the ignorance is dissolved, there is no more questions, because all questions boil down to in ignorance. In the world, whatsoever the question is, all questions boil down to what? Give a solution to my existing problem. That's all. All questions boil down, whatsoever the wording is, howsoever it appears, all boils down to what? Give a solution to my existing problem. First give a solution to that. We'll see later. The wise one says, ignore that problem. That's where you find it very difficult with him after a period of time. Because he says, ignore the problem. Let us go deeper into the source from which the problem arises. Because as long as the source is not attended to, problems will keep appearing. Because you have a PhD in how to create problems, he says. I have a PhD in how to create problems. And what is the problem? You follow? The subtle intellect, which is the development of spiritual evolution, which is the starting point of spiritual evolution, takes a completely different turn. What is the different turn? You can call it as, that's the word he uses, ascharya, wonderment. In that wonderment, what happens? In that wonderment, your penetrating capacity is so sharp. Your objectivity becomes so high that you can see it so clearly. Anything seen clearly, it disappears. Problem, if seen clearly, if seen with clarity, it disappears. That's where in the world they say the solution lies inside the problem, no? They talk about solution doesn't lie outside the problem, solution lies inside the problem. Where inside the problem? To the one who can see it with clarity. To the one who can see with clarity. How to evoke this inspiration? How to create this inspiration? How to make a person seek all this? The answer is, he gives various definitions. He gives various indicative definitions. You follow? These indicative definitions are not meant to create an understanding. These indicative definitions are create or is to evoke an inspiration. What is that inspiration? That wonderment. Wonderment in the sense of feeling a banana, daffodils. You follow? The growth. If it is seen through ignorance, if it is seen through the worldly logic, all these indicative definitions looks like authoritative definitions. Instead of indicators, it turns out to be if looked through the ignorance. Therefore, he says, it is not killed when the body is killed. Now what does it mean? You can't see anything beyond the body. You don't see anything beyond the body. As long as you don't see anything beyond the body, the death of the body or the change of the body itself becomes problematic. If you can see penetratively inside the body, if you can go deeper into the body and see what it is, as your interest gets into the subtler, the lower ceases to interest you. If the interest turns into the subtler, the lower will not be inspiring. The lower will not be any more interesting. Just as if you have listened to higher form of music, the lower form of music ceases to interest. Now you can't listen to that. Anyone puts that, anyone makes it sound, you feel like saying? For the person who is interested in lower, the higher looks like noise. It looks like என்னமோ பேசினே இருக்காங்க, அப்போ ஒன்னும் புரிய மாட்டேன்றது. Non-stop also they are talking. You understand? When you penetrate deeper into the body, that's where the question comes. Gross body, subtle body, causal body, and there is something that is enlivening the three bodies. You go deeper and deeper and deeper. At some point you understand, when everything is changing around, there is a changeless center. When everything is changing around, there is something that is not changing. When everything is dead and gone, there is something that is alive. That something which is alive all the time, always, cannot be part of time. How would you call it as? He uses the word eternal. He uses the word unborn. He uses the word changeless. He uses the word ancient. All this is not appealing to Arjuna so much, so immediately he says, it is not killed when the body is killed. So, somewhere they will be still there, no sir? Somewhere there will be still, no? After the death, people genuinely they ask, even if he is not there, somewhere he is, no? Yeah, he is there, safely, don't worry, na? You are also satisfied. You follow what I am saying? Supposing if someone says, how do I know, na? Oh, you are also as ignorant, even though that is the right? No, that's the right answer. Even though it is killed here, but then they are transported and safe somewhere, no? Okay, if not here, at least California, they are safe, no? At least if not in California, somewhere in some loka they are safe, no? Maybe in Pitru Loka they are safe, maybe in Vaikuntha Loka they are safe, but somewhere there have to be, somewhere existence has to be there. And for that existence you need to support. That's the way of ignorance. That's the way in which the mind functions. That's the way in which ignorance functions. So when he says it is not killed, when the body is killed, such a deep thought. Body is killed, it's gone. What is it that is? What is it in the body that is not killed when it is killed? So when he talks about killing the body, he talks about all the three bodies. The gross, subtle and causal bodies. Not only the physical body. Even though it means the physical body, what it means, the end of killing means the end. Death means the end. Or in the way that we misunderstand it to be. That's why in the world, carefully follow, wise one is not bothered about death because the greatest illusion of life is death. The illusion of life, if at all there is only one illusion to life, the illusion is death. Because nothing dies, the form changes. There is no such thing as death. It is only the change of the form. That cannot be understood because we don't know what brought the form and we don't know what took the form out. Is there what happens after death? Whatever happened to you before birth. If you are so keen on knowing what happened after death, you cannot probe into what happens after death. You can probe into what happened before birth. Just as before birth is so much unknown, so much darkness, the same thing is death too. In the way that we misunderstand birth and death. In the true sense of it, what is death? It's a change. If change is what is known as death, the most constant thing that is happening in life is death only. The most happening thing in death means the most happening thing on the other side must be birth. Because only if there is a birth, there can be a death. Are you able to follow? So the most constant happening thing on one side is birth. The most constant happening thing on the other side is death. The only difference is we see it since we see it over a period of time, we are not able to see it simultaneously happening. The wise one has the capacity to see it simultaneously. Logically, through knowledge and understanding, Arjuna is not able to see this. So what he did in chapter 11, he showed it into a form. And when Arjuna saw that form, he got terrified. Because, you should see the description. He says, he sees birth and death happening at the same time. That is chapter 11. When he saw birth and death happening at the same time, he got so he said, I can't handle this, come down. Show me your gentle form, Krishna. What is that gentle form? Chaturpuja Vishnu form you show. Don't show me the reality. Because I can't. What he saw, Arjuna describes that. He says, birth and death at the same time. If you see birth and death at the same time, both becomes meaningless. You are able to follow? If you can see both at the same time happening, both happening most constantly, most consistently, what happens to you after that? Birth becomes meaningless, death also becomes meaningless. Then what is beyond both? Is there anything beyond this? Then the query comes. Without this understanding, how much ever they say, how much ever the enlightened master talk about, there is Atman, there is Brahman, there is God, that's your true nature, you have lost it, get back to it. Say something new, no. Oh, that's why, at least I put up an act as though I am saying something. Same old story. You follow? The moment you can see profit and loss together at the same time, both becomes meaningless. It becomes meaningful, it becomes attractive only when you believe that one can be avoided and one can be held on to. Are you able to follow? Profit and loss, if you can see both coexisting at the same time, it's only a question of time, the appearance and disappearances. Both becomes meaningless. When both becomes meaningful, when both becomes very attractive, when you believe both are separate and one can be held on to and the other can be avoided. Somehow always losses can be avoided and somehow always profits can be maintained. How, sir? Is there a technique? Can you understand the absurdity of the question? The wise one says both keeps happening. Not over the long period of time. Don't get carried away by the longevity of time. Don't get carried away by the longevity of time, because time is such a relative entity. That's why you don't see it through the period of time, you see it above time. Are you able to follow? Because time is such a relative entity, anything seen through the framework of time brings in a reality to it. Brings in a reality, because you can only see one and you can't see the opposite. Are you able to follow? You can only see one and not the opposite. If you penetrate deeper, if you rise in understanding, and if you can see both together at the same time, then only both becomes, then only both appears futile, then only both appears meaningless, then only both appears uninteresting. Where you can say, neither interested in profit, neither interested in loss, neither interested in pleasure, neither interested in pain, neither interested in honor, neither interested in dishonor. Even this shall pass away. Even this shall, because at any point of time, physically you can only see one. Carefully follow. That's what I am saying. At any point of time, physically you can see only one. But penetratively, through knowledge and understanding, you can see the other. You can see the other also. It's like at any point of time you can only see one side of the coin. Correct? At any point of time you can only see one side, and the other side can be seen only through don't say coin flip panni paakணும் sir. Don't say that. The other side can be seen only through understanding. Wow. What is understanding? If this side is there, the other side must exist. Since you are the proof of the other side existing, the proof of the other side of the coin is you see only one side. At any point of time, you can see only one side. You can't see two sides together. The very fact that you see only one is the proof that the other is there. So it means what? You don't get carried away by what you see, because you are able to see the other two. You don't get carried away by what you see. You will not be affected by what you see. You will not be affected by what you experience, because you can see the other two. You can see the other two. When you can see the other, then comes the query. Then comes the question. What is it? Am I endlessly bound by this? Is there anything beyond it? So when you can see both together, you understand how much you are bound. Bondage becomes visible. Bondage becomes clear then only. After this there is a query. After this there is a question. What is the question? Is there anything beyond this? Is this all to life? The two sides to the coin, appearing, disappearing alternatively? Is this the meaning of life? Is there anything? Is there anything beyond all this? Tragically, we know the answer even before we know the question. That's the tragedy. We know the answer even before we have learned how to. That's where conditioning will make you by heart the answers first, so that you can never question. So that you can never question. That's why the first lesson he says is question. Take all that you have taken for granted, question. Because conditioning makes sure that answers are provided first. What is beyond world? God is there beyond the world. You asked a question and you gave the answer, and your being is remaining the, as a person you don't change. You are exactly the same, because the question also comes from the conditioning, the answer also comes from the conditioning, and your being is untouched. The ignorance is untouched. In fact, it's growing deeper and deeper. Just as you can have a PhD in science, you can be a Nobel Prize winner and be as superstitious as an illiterate. So on the one side it looks like you know everything, on the other side there is something exactly the opposite. Wonderful is this verse from Kathopanishad. Wonderful is this verse. It is not killed when the body is killed. Nothing is okay, na? Just remember this. At any point of time, you can see only one side of the coin. The proof of the other side of the coin is the side that you are seeing. Because the coin always has, there cannot be a coin with inside. Correct? The proof of the other side is not knowing what the other side is in seeing this. The very fact that you are seeing this means what follows? The other side. The other means the opposite. Life means death. Profit means loss. Birth means death. Honor means the entire endless pairs of opposites. The endless pairs of opposites existing. The proof is you are seeing one. The very fact that you are seeing one itself is enough indicator that the other is there, which grossly you cannot see, which physically you can't see, but you can understand. That's why there are two kinds of seeing. One is through the normal seeing, another is seeing through the eye of wisdom, jnana chakshu. There are two kinds of seeing. One is the ordinary seeing. The ordinary seeing says, the side that I see to the coin is real. The other side doesn't exist. That is ordinary seeing. Are you able to follow? Ordinary seeing says, the side that you see is real, that alone is. Jnana chakshu says, as much real as this side is, what is real? Other side too. That's where you transcend both. That's where you lose interest in both. Are you able to follow? The side that you see as much real as this side is, the other is as real as this. When you see both at the same time, when you understand the reality of both at the same time, you become a Nachiketas. You will ask, Yama, you keep your horses, you keep your dancers, tell me what is beyond that. So much of explanation is required to make you understand the reality of the other side of the coin. That's all they are trying. So much of explanation, so much of argument, so much of logic, so much of wisdom is required to convince you about what? About what? Not the reality of God and all. That cannot be proven anyway. That cannot be convinced anyway. You can only experience it for yourself. But what can be taught? As much as this side of the coin is real, the other side too is as real as this. Therefore, this side you see your ordinary chakshu. The other side you see through the jnana chakshu. Both you see it together, you lose interest in both. And then the query comes. Then the question comes. What is there beyond all this? Is there anything beyond? This is not killed. It is not killed when the body is killed. This is not born, nor does it die. There is the third dimension. Beyond the two sides of the coin, there is the third dimension. There is something within time which is timeless also. As I say, look between two thoughts, look between two experiences. In the framework of time that you see, there is something that is beyond time. In the something that is constantly changing, there is something that is beyond change. In this something that is being constantly being born and dying, there is something that it's neither born nor. First, Swallow that. Digest that. Stay with it for a while. Then comes the thirst. Then comes the thirst to know it. Then the teacher says, you can't know it, you can only become it. Because the only way to know is to become it. The only way to know what an apple is, become an apple. The only way to know what the dog is, to become a dog. Don't follow like that. Faulty logic this is. Who corrects are faulty logic this is. The only way to, you cannot know it, because knowing as an object is impossible. The only way of knowing is becoming. Brahmavid Brahmaiva Bhavati. The Upanishad. The knower of Brahman becomes Brahmavid Brahmaiva Bhavati. The knower of Brahman becomes, the knower of God becomes God. To know God, you need to understand what? There are two sides to the coin, and both the sides are real. In and through these two, there is a third dimension also. In and through the two, there is the third. The known, the unknown, the unknowable. The Akshara, the Uttama Purusha. In and through all these two, there is the third dimension. The moving wheel is supported by the unmoving axle. All the changes happen against the backdrop of that changeless entity. All colors can be seen only against the backdrop of a colorless thing. Water acquires all kinds of taste because by itself it has no taste. All taste is possible because fundamentally it is. You understand that? All sounds you are able to hear because the background is silence. This is the language. In the background of silence only you can hear all sound. Therefore, the phenomena of the variety of sound is the proof that there is something soundless. Clear? That's why they don't affirmatively say, they only negate it. Because silence is not another kind of sound. I heard silence. Can you hear silence? You can hear only sound. That soundlessness exists in that backdrop. All sounds arise, exist and merge. In the ocean, in the backdrop of ocean, the waves arise, exist and merge. You have a choice, Arjuna, to focus on that or to focus on this. You have a choice to focus on the changeless or to focus on the. Don't try to focus on both at the same time. You can't serve two masters at the same time. Either you serve God or you serve Satan. You can't focus, you can't attend to both at the same time. Because when this is seen, that is lost. When that is seen, this is lost. Remember, when you are place the finger in front and focus. Don't try it now. Because I have tried it. I tried it. See, anything he says as an example in the room, I'll go on, I'll sit and try. He gives an example, no? Place the finger in the front. And if you focus on the finger, the background is lost. If background is focused, finger is lost. But you can't focus on both. If you are focusing both, you are insanity. You become insane. Because you can't focus. To see the other side as real as that which you are experiencing now is step number 1. Step number 1 of spiritual evolution is to see the other side as real as that which you are experiencing now. That's where that poem, even this shall pass away. Even this shall pass away. Is only saying, as you are seeing this, you should be able to see the other also. When someone is praising, he understands what? In that praise, the other side of it is abuse. So when someone is abused, he doesn't get carried away. When someone praises, again he doesn't. That's where if you come to the 7th, 8th chapter, the definition of a wise man is samam pashyati sarvatra, he says. Samam, he sees it as equal. What is the equality? Equality means this is as real as other. Profit is as real as loss. Health is as real as disease. Birth is as real as death. See both together. What you must develop is to see it together. When you see it together, the query comes about the third dimension. Then the thirst comes to know about the third. What is the third? Which is not a part of the third, which is not part of the two. Dvandva Atita. That which is beyond the two. To know that which is beyond the two, the interest in the two must go first. Then only you can know that. As long as you are retaining the interest in the two, that which is beyond two can never be experienced, can never be known. To lose the interest in the two is what is known as vairagya, detachment, sannyas. It's where he says, by developing the sannyas, you are not giving up anything. You are not giving up anything. You are only leaving the shadow behind and holding the real. Able to follow? Losing the interest in the two is what is known as detachment. Is what is known as vairagya. Is what is known as sannyas, renunciation, detachment. Comes when you can see both together. Normally we see it happening over the period of time, and the longevity of time gives us the illusion that both are separate, one can be held on to and the other can be avoided. It creates this illusion. The time, the longevity creates the illusion. What is the illusion? Somehow one can be kept and the other can be discarded. Somehow health can be maintained all time and ill health can be avoided. Somehow profit can be maintained all the time and losses can be avoided. He says you work for profit, but inevitably what comes? And he says, so inspiring it is. Nobody works for loss. You work only for profit. What is inevitable? You try and eat the right type of food and be healthy. What is inevitable? Now, if you don't see it properly, anyway disease, no sir. indulge? Why bother? Or if I am working on the right side of it, I hope, I expect, I demand that the other should not happen. This is ignorance. This is called ignorance. Therefore, what is understanding? The true understanding, the real understanding. You see one side of the coin itself is the proof, the other existing. The two itself is there because there is something beyond it. Just as even though silence cannot be heard, all kinds of sounds can be heard. Only for you to hear me, you all must be quiet. If I stay quiet, we can hear the noise of the fan. If that is also switched off, now some other noise will be. But what can not be heard? Silence can never be heard. And yet you understand what? All noises exist, all sounds arise, exist and dissolve back into, just as waves into, any example is okay, doesn't matter. Same example, bore I am just giving another example, that's all. Concept is the same, that's all, just a different example, that's all. You transcend both. You understand the futility of both. You understand the uselessness of both. You understand both are meaningless. When the meaninglessness of this is realized, what is meaningful? Question comes. The question of what is meaningful comes only when you understand the meaninglessness of this. Now all our queries, all our concerns, all our interest is how to make the meaningless more attractive. How to make the meaningless more, how to make the unreal. The meaningless is meaningless. The moment you understand the reality, the meaninglessness of this, the thirst for the meaningful comes. How to create that? That is the challenge. The challenge is not to talk about God. That is very easy. But the difficulty is to make one realize the meaninglessness of what he sees as meaningful. Arjuna is saying killing. So he is using that as an tool. He is using that as the tool. This is not born, nor does it die, nor having been will ever again cease to be. This is unborn, eternal, changeless, ancient. It is not killed when the body is killed. Fabulous verse. He quotes from the Kathopanishad.
அவெல்லாம் எங்க இருக்கா